Okay, thank you. Well, welcome everybody here this morning. I'm going to try to talk about the future of Perl. But first, I'd like to actually discuss something about dead languages. And the reason I'm doing that is that about 2 years ago now, this book actually got published. This is a book by Brian Deere about the Plato system, and that's actually where I learned to program. It's a fascinating tale of missed opportunities and blind spots. The reason I'm mentioning this is because I see some parallels between Perl and the Plato system, and I'd like to present the final result of the Plato story. If you're wondering what I am actually programmed on at the time, this is the hypermodern IST1 terminal by Control Data. It actually contained an 8088 processor. No, I should say an 8080 processor, sorry. One generation before that. That book actually I still have. But yeah, this was basically my first dead language, which I used from 1977 to 1983. Of course, Tutor itself didn't die until about 10 years ago. And one could argue it's still alive because there's some people that actually have some website somewhere where you can actually run the games of Plato and program in Tutor if you want. Well, in the browser, I think. It was just completely nutty crazy, but there you go. My next language that I worked in was Tancor LAS, language authoring system. It was a spin-off of Plato, and you could do things with sound and laser discs. It was really, really great. But they missed the boat. For a long time, in the early 90s, they said, okay, OS2 is going to be the future. Anybody remember OS2? I guess, okay, a few of us still do, but yeah, they didn't make it. And by the time they actually had something on Windows, it was way, way, way too late. So in 1994 we needed to do something else because, no more income and stuff. So Wendy and I started to do web development. We sold our first Perl project before I actually learned the language. I thought, how hard can it be? And indeed, it was not very hard. Especially at that time when it was just not even Perl 5 yet. And one of the things we did was the first online flight information system on the web. And that's actually where I learned to love Perl. Perl 5 at the time. One of the things I did was actually create a templating system, Lisp Perl. It had very similar qualities to PHP. And looking back on it now, I think writing a templating system is a bit like a rite of passage. It's when you realize the power of eval and basically stop messing about it. This ran many Dutch websites for many, many years. I think the last one was decommissioned about 12 years ago. So it kept on going for a long time. Before there was ModPerl, I also used this to generate PHP code, which was faster in the server, so you didn't have to do CGI bit. I am so happy it never made it to CPAN, because it is riddled with security issues. And yeah, so I know some people, after I basically didn't work on it anymore, spent a lot of time plugging some of the holes that were in there. But yeah. So at the end of 1999, we sold the company. We had grown to 45 people. I didn't like being a pointy-headed boss. Wendy didn't like it either. We needed further growth to compete, and the company needed guidance that we couldn't actually give anymore, and so we were basically completely and utterly burned out. So for us it was a time to reflect and deflate, because we had grown physically as well. Even more than we are now. Okay, and it was time to give back. Give back because Perl allowed us to actually grow our company the way that we did, and we were grateful about that. So one of the things that we did, were involved in, I should say, is the second YEPSI Europe in 2001. It was, well, people still remember it. We were there, so it must have been good. And we also did last year's the Perl conference in Amsterdam. We were involved in that. But yeah, going back to the early 2000s, we had a number of projects that we were involved in, and basically all of them failed after 9/11. We had a website for hotels, for B2B information for hotels, and that basically was about, we had plans of going to NASDAQ actually. Spent a lot of money on paying lawyers to think about things like that. And 9/11 happened, and there was not a single project started for 9 months. Nothing, no money whatsoever. So that basically killed that. At least the growth ideas about it. It still exists, by the way, to this day, but in a much smaller form. So at the early 2000s, I was basically sitting around, so what can I do to help? And Jarko said, well, iThreads need more testing. Oh, and I/O layers. Yeah, we need to test that as well. This was pre-5.8. And so I got into that and basically wrote a lot of modules that actually didn't see much maintenance since the past 6 years. I don't think many of those modules were actually used a lot. Some of them were. I'll get back to that one. But in any case, I learned a lot. And I learned a lot about Perl, about modules, ecosystem and people. And I also learned that iThreads are basically broken by implementation. The idea, the API of iThreads is really, really nice. But to this day, and this is an article from 2003, the same problem exists. For the past 15 years, P5P has not been able to come up with a solution. I don't think they can. I don't think they will. But yeah, there's that. So my solution, I thought, well, it's broken. We need to fix this. So I created this forks module. It's a drop-in replacement for threads, but using fork. Which is really ironic if you realize that the Perl iThreads implementation uses the simulation or the emulation of fork on Windows to emulate threads on Unix. So why not use forks? Well, I don't know why this never got into the core, because I think it was a lot faster and a lot better supportable, but okay. Nowadays, I actually would not recommend using forks because there's something better on the market around this. It's called MCE. It's the many-core engine for Perl, and basically that takes forks and things like thread pool to the next level. So if you're actually in Perl 5 and want to do anything async, multiprocessing, this apparently is one of the new things to look at. So by the end of 2003, there was no money in the bank anymore at all. And so I had to actually look for some work to do. So I got the people at Booking crazy enough to hire me. Bookings at .nl at the time, yeah. At that time there were 35 people at Booking.nl. But yeah, it was a very heavy growth environment. 150% growth every year, year over year, is a rather crazy environment. The idea was, the problem was always, okay, now we know this year this is our maximum. Add that times 1.5, 2. So how many computers, how many systems do we need next year? Are we going to be able to get them in time? Is the system not going to collapse? It was tricky, but it was fun to do. And in 2012, for me, it was time to do something else. The company had grown to 5,000 people. This is not the same company. If you're in a company with 30 people, that's nice. You almost know everybody. With 5,000 people. And how many is nowadays? I think it's 18,000. I shouldn't be looking at you. No, we're booking up that company. How many? 20,000? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, I basically was winding down again, and I basically was looking at the situation with Perl 5 and Perl 6, and I was saying to myself, I will not sit idly by to see my favorite language die, and not this time. And you may quote me on that. So one of the things that I did at the time was the Perl Reunification Summit. That's a familiar face, that's still a familiar face, that's still a familiar face. And hiding there is Tux, he's not here, okay. Anyway, it got together a lot of Perl people in the same room that hadn't been in the same room for a long time. And they didn't kill each other, so that was good. So I got more into Perl 6 in 2012. Learning Perl 6 then was much harder. The documentation wasn't extensive. Definitely not stable with regards to features. It was at least 100 times slower than it is now. It didn't have any proper Unicode support yet, and it didn't have any of the concurrent features yet. So a lot has happened since in the past 6 years in that respect. But getting into Perl 6, I realized one thing. I am a bigamist. I love Perl 5 and Perl 6. And I really got into the Perl 6 development, and I actually recently made it to number 2 in the number of commits that I did on the Rakudo repository, which is weird, looking at that like that. Did I do that? I don't know. Very weird. So by the end of 2015, we actually released the first official version of Perl 6, called Perl 6C, 6C. And it had many contributors. Do they actually all fit on the screen? I think they do. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, oddly enough, there were 2 or 3 people that actually wanted to be taken off this list. I don't get it, but anyway. From 2015, I've started contributing to the Perl 6 Weekly. If you want to keep up to date on Perl 6 news, every week, usually late Monday night, otherwise early Tuesday morning, you get a new issue of the Perl 6 Weekly. And this has been, the original Perl 6 Weekly was from Piers Corley. He started in 2003. That went on for a few years, then it stopped again, then other people taking it up. And Timo Paulsen started in the early 2014 again with the weekly. Oops. So we've done 211 weeklies so far. Yaldi, yes, Yaldi indeed. It's always fun to actually, when I do this talk again, to actually add a latest bunch here. Yeah, good, and update the number. So, why do I do this? Well, very simply because I love Perl. I love Perl 5 as a language. I call that Perl with a capital P. Versus the Perl 5 runtime, aka Perl. I'm not so fond of the latter. I think it is has been a very good car, but and people keep maintaining it and keep putting fins on the side and stuff like that to make it look shiny. But I think it's past its time. I think there's actually more than one runtime already for Perl 5, because for Perl we actually have Perl, we have Perlito, we have C Perl, we have R Perl. There's actually people here with a stand for R Perl. C Perl, I think somebody is using it. Yeah-ish. Perlito, I know that is sort of in production at Booking, because with Perlito, you can it actually used to generate Java code from Perl code. So you write your program in Perl, and it actually translates it to Java and runs it on the JVM for some applications. These all run a subset of some Perl 5 programming language. Even all of the versions of the Perl 5 runtime run different versions of Perl 5. There's backward compatibility, but there's no forward compatibility, so they're all running a subset. So I would say, why not Perl 6 as well? Why can't Perl 6 also run a subset of Perl 5? Well, over the years we've come to realize that writing something that will actually parse Perl 5 code is nice, but what you really need is the semantics of Perl 5. If you can, it's not too difficult to write something that will actually parse if, parens open, condition, parens close, curly, etc. That's not so difficult. What's more difficult, what's more work, is to actually get something like listutil any. Hey, it's part of the core. It's not part of the language, but you need it to actually run your Perl 5 programs. So I've come to realize that semantics are a prerequisite to actually doing a Perl 5 runtime on Perl 6. I also come to realize that semantics actually have a use of their own. They have a use of their own because they lower the threshold to the language in many ways. They lower the threshold in the Perl 5 programs because they can actually use things that they're used to in Perl 6. And they lower the fact that you can actually more easily migrate programs to Perl 6 because you don't have to actually do a lot of the code again in Perl 6 because we have a Perl 5 version, Perl 6 version of the Perl 5 libraries that you need. And more importantly, I would say a language has a community. And why is that actually important? Well, a community has invested in its language. Be it Perl 5 or Perl 6, people invest in it. And that's why I think that you need to honor the people that invested in the language and make sure that that investment doesn't go away. So in that respect, I think we can look at CPAN as the bank, where actually everybody has an account and put their stuff there. We have DarkPAN, which are the shoe boxes that everybody keeps under the bed. But regardless of CPAN or DarkPAN, everybody wants to actually keep their valuables precious. You don't want it to lose value. And on top of that, I think everybody wants to feel at home. So therefore, I actually propose the following idea to be propagated inside the communities. In the beginning, there was Perl, right? And then a little later, we got CPAN. Then a little later, we got the Perl Foundation. And then much later, we got this crazy thing there going around called Perl 6. And what I'm going at, I called it the drone-centric view, right? And what I want to go to is a different view of this, and I would call that the CPANican view, where actually CPAN is the most important thing. Because CPAN is where everybody has invested in. And in this CPAN, I also mean DarkPAN, everything associated with that. So this is the view that I want to go to. I wrote an open letter to the Perl community in January, which I felt was another attempt at reunification. And in it, I actually suggested a butterfly plan. Now, somebody actually, I think it was Raf, pointed out to me that butterfly plan is actually a thing. Before I invented it, it's like having rooms attached to another room like that. It's called a butterfly plan. So that I want to actually create a CPAN butterfly plan to actually provide Perl 5 semantics in Perl 6. because Perl 5 is so much more than just Perl 5, the runtime. Because it is the runtime plus core modules plus CPAN plus DarkPAN. The open letter created quite some comments. Oddly enough, it was still 77% upvoted, which is actually more than I usually get on Reddit. It's usually more like 55, 60. But okay, this gave me a little food for thought, all these reactions there. And we also had a little sadness in the family. My brother-in-law died in that period, and yeah, that was quite heavy for us. So yeah. So where are we now? Any David Bowie fans here? No. Okay. Somebody from Berlin should know this. Okay. We now have about 1150 modules in the Perl 6 ecosystem. Over the past months, I have worked on putting about 100 plus built-in Perl 5 functions into modules that you can load from CPAN. Some of them, yeah, you probably missed some of them. That's either because I didn't get around to it yet, or they're standardly already supported in Perl 6, because Perl 6 is not that different from Perl 5. Some of these functions were very trivial to implement. Everybody knows what study does? No, it doesn't do anything. It's a no-op. But you can now do it in Perl 6 as well. Some are easy, like chomp and chop. Some actually have slightly different semantics, like substring, index, and pop. I forget what the difficulty was with substring, but oh yeah, substring in Perl 5 is a left value. In Perl 6 it isn't. Index gives you -1 in Perl 5, and in Perl 6 it gives you nil if it doesn't find it. And pop will, on an empty array, will give you a failure instead of undef in Perl 6. So I re-implemented these to give them the Perl 5 semantics. So you will get, well, there's no undef in Perl 6, but it will give you any. Or nil, actually, I'm not sure. Anyway, doesn't really matter. Some have magic semantics in Perl 5, shift. Everybody knows what the magic semantics of shift are? Huh? argv and add underscore. Yeah. Some of them just need a little native call sugar. All those types of functions basically just you need to call you need to call into the C libraries. I mean, if you look at the Perl 5 version, it's not much more than that as well. And fortunately, we have such a thing as native call, so that's quite easy to do. Some required a lot of work. Tie, that was quite a lot of work. Pack and unpack, that's also quite a lot of work. Not completely supports all of the features yet, but I haven't heard anybody complain about the missing features yet, so I am not putting time into it until somebody starts saying, hey, I missed these features, and then I can look at them. Quote meta is one of those other ones that took a lot of work, which fortunately I didn't have to do because somebody else already did that. Some of the functions are just goofy. Reset. What does reset do? Nobody knows what reset does? Okay, I'll give you a hint. You can specify a range of letters as a parameter. Okay, the letters that you specify indicate the letters of our variables. If an our variable starts with that letter, it will get undef. All our variables. All our variables. At Salt Lake City, Larry said this was from Perl 1, I think it was, something like that. This is really, really, really old. It's still in there, and you can now do it in Perl 6. I also did a lot of core and CPAN modules. Well, not all. I didn't know all of them, but these are the ones that are available at the moment. There's silly things like Acme sign of disapproval, which is just another way of saying warn. But this was actually an exercise in finding out which parts of the toolchain break if you actually have a module name with Unicode characters in them. It was an interesting exercise because my normal way of uploading to CPAN failed. I had to actually manually upload this to CPAN. Once on CPAN it sort of worked, except that the name got mangled, but you can actually download it and install it. Well, there's all of the list utils. So you got list utils, so much utils. Okay, there's list more utils and there's list some utils. Can anybody tell me the difference between the two? Well, one is maintained by one person and the other is maintained by another person. And they disagree on the build process. Otherwise they're identical for maybe some unfixed bugs here and there. I did not bother to actually try to mimic the bugs. I just basically made one the dependency of the other and be done with it. Things like text Levenstein, text upside down, very useful. Memorize could be useful for you. Here's one that actually done by somebody who got into Perl 6 because she wanted to and was in my class in Salt Lake City, and this was actually uploaded during my class, which made me very proud. But we need more hands for this process. So I would argue, please join me and other people in porting Perl 5 code to Perl 6. Because I think implementing known Perl 5 features in Perl 6 is a very good training for you. But Perl is tainted. I mean, why would I do this? I mean, the end of the world is near, etc. I would say this shouldn't be about how we, the community, see Perl. Sorry, it should be about later. It shouldn't be about how the world sees Perl. It should be about how we see Perl. I would say be proud about being involved with Perl. I would say engage in guerrilla marketing. For instance, write blog posts about Perl 5 and or Perl 6. Show the people that it's still there, that people still use it, that it's still getting new features in 5 and 6. And to give a good example, I've been writing some blog posts on opensource.com. It's going to be a series of 12. The second one just got published yesterday. It's all going to be about migrating Perl 5 to Perl 6. Code, probably reporting the semantics, and the things that you run into while doing that. I think that's very important to show people that Perl 5 is still there, Perl 6 is very much there. Actually, I think Perl 5 and Perl 6, the sum of these two is bigger than the sum of the parts. So whenever you see a negative blog post or comment about Perl, I would say react to it in a very nice but determined way. I would say hug the trolls, because they might not know that they're trolling, or might not realize that they're stupid. Sorry, did I say that? That might not realize what they're doing. Because I think Perl as a brand is still very strong. It is very strong, but for the wrong perceptions. Everybody has an opinion about Perl. Everybody knows about Perl. The opinion may not be something that you like, but That's something you can actually work on. I mean, you can bend the perceptions slowly in a positive direction. And I think, well, the emphasis on slowly maybe. But that's something that we've seen. Wendy and I have been doing a lot of conferences, also non-Perl conferences, open source conferences. And from the years that we started doing that, we got a lot of negative reactions all the time. One of the stories that Wendy always says that every year at FOSDEM, this guy came up to the booth screaming that Perl should die, and then he went off again. Stuff like that. We don't have that anymore, so that's positive. And
I didn't kill him.
no.
Almost hurt him, and thank you very much. Made him even more angry.
So keep telling and showing people that Perl has a future. Be it on the original Perl runtime or on another virtual machine. Be it Perl 5 or Perl 6. I mean, this is what Perl is about. There's more than one way to do it. Right? So, therefore, I'd say the future of Perl is here. We just need to work on it. And keep working on it. And again, that's when I realized that I had way too few slides for the size of the talk. So I will be taking questions if you have any.
Which is a core event,
Yeah.
and that is Perl. And when we had talked about Perl, we said, okay, cognitive report of nothing, because it's should be used everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So, not particularly the traffic, forcing for 2.5, 2.6, not using
Yeah. Well, oh, repeat the question. So the question is, isn't there a trap there by porting Perl 5 code to Perl 6 that we get not so good Perl 6 code to run, not such a good situation to run your code in? Yes, probably. But as always with software development, it's a matter of investment in people and investment in metal. And yeah, I mean, if you only need to invest like a week in people and instead of a few months in people, I think that in many cases easily offsets just buying some more hardware to make sure that it all runs fine. Never mind the environment, but okay, that's another story. And maybe later you can do something else. I mean, I think Crow itself is one of the killer apps of Perl 6. If people really get what you can do with Crow, it's going to take off really, really fast. Get HTTP 2 out of the box. Get, I mean, lots of, eh? Yeah, WebSockets, everything out of the box, ready to go. There's not many situations where you actually have that easily, and get all of the nice performance and bits of async Perl 6. So yeah, there's always a matter of that. I can't make that decision for you. You have to look at it yourself. Do you want to spend more time in people, more effort in people, or in metal? And maybe the metal part will not be so bad after all, because we try to optimize all codes from all the different denominations. So
Also, we actually know that this process works. My first Perl 5 code didn't look very much like Perl code. It looked like C. And Perl was very helpful in this way because I could still write code without having to learn all the language first. It grew gradually on me. If I look back on my first code, laborious, but it worked, it got the job done, and it got me into Perl.
So I'll repeat Stefan's point. You can program Perl in just about any language that you have in your head. But it allows you to actually get started in Perl, and later you realize that you can actually do things better and more Perlish, more Perl 5ish or Perl 6ish or whatever. But it gets you started. So, other question? No more questions? Well, then I can only say thank you for being. Oh, what? Some what? Modules. I would say look at the river of CPAN and take a module that's upriver. I would say, yeah, that you need a Perl 6.
If you also make a Perl 6 version of DBI, or DBI as a class.
Yeah.
No.
Okay, several suggestions for modules were being made. Knishi.
Perception from old people is one thing to do. Is it helpful for newcomers to join program, or do we need anything else to have more?
Well, this is really not about what I'm doing here. Is not really about getting new people outside of the Perl community into Perl 6. This is about making clear to the world that there's a lot of Perl out there, and we are still a community, and we can work together to make something better for the future. Now, with regards to people coming from outside, this is not about them. It is a little bit about them, especially the articles that I write for opensource.com. It is something that I hope will people that don't know about Perl period will wonder, what is this thing about Perl and Perl 5 and Perl? What I thought it was dead or stuff like that. I hope it will make people think about it. People that didn't know about Perl, that have a lot of preconceptions about Perl. I hope it will make them think about it. And the people that have been using Perl for the longest time, but are now managers maybe, see that there's something happening in Perl again, still, would help making them make the right decisions. So, yeah, but this is not really focused on getting people from outside. This is more inside the community thing. Well, if this is it, thank you very much. I would say get to work and get some modules migrated. Thank you very much.